Representative Tim Butler, thanks for joining us on the Illinois channel. And for the purpose of the viewers, we wanted to talk about a bill that will be coming to the floor of the House next week, somewhere in the area of the 15th and 16th. But strangely, so far this bill has not been published, and yet it is immensely important. It could change the way we get power, electrical power, to our homes and businesses across a major part of the state. Joining us, Tim Butler, thanks for being with us. And you serve, I believe, Tim, on the Energy Committee yourself?
I'm on the House Energy and Environment Committee, and I'm also on the House Public Utilities Committee. So those are the two main committees with oversight of our power grid in Illinois.
Just so we can give a synopsis, and then we'll go into detail. This bill, or this is kind of a breakdown of what many who are familiar with what's going on with this bill say is wrong with it, that it would cost union jobs to be lost at the power plants, create much higher home electric bills, cost Illinois businesses millions more, undermine the reliability of the electric grid in central and southern Illinois, and possibly require the importing of electricity from coal-fired plants from out of state. And this is a so-called green energy bill, and yet the whole point of it, apparently, is that we can say in Illinois that we are green energy users and kind of, wave the flag that we're saving the planet from fossil fuels. But, Tim, what's wrong with this? Let me let you have a say. From what you know, there's a number of things wrong, not only, I would say, with the bill, maybe, but that this major piece of legislation has kind of only been heard behind closed doors thus far as I can tell.
Yeah, first let me say, first of all, Terry, thanks for having me on. And I think a lot of us know that we want to transition into a future where we are reliant upon renewables, but we need to make sure that we can rely upon renewables. And I think that's one of the biggest concerns that we have is that, if we transition off of coal here in the southern part of the state, in the central and southern part of the state, we've largely been relying upon coal for a long time. As we transition to more renewables, we need to make sure that it's reliable. And you're looking at my room here, my house. The lights you see on behind me are powered by a coal-fired power plant here, a municipally owned coal-fired power plant here in Springfield that does the citizens of Springfield very well and has reliable baseload power to make sure that our homes are heated and cooled and the lights are on at night and things like that. But I think that the concern is that putting these arbitrary dates to transition to technology that is still being developed, especially from a storage capacity for renewables, really puts us at a disadvantage. And you listed several of the bullet points there with our concerns, not the least of which is, there's a bunch of really good paying jobs that go along with the energy industry here in this state that are at peril, union jobs. And I do find it a bit humorous that my friends on the Democratic side of the aisle beat their chest so often about unions. Yet when it comes to things like this, the first thing they want to do is cut the legs out from the unions and throw these guys out on the street to try to find other employment. But look, I think this is indicative of the way that we do things in Springfield. There's been a lot of discussions about this. And there has been some backroom negotiations going on, but to have legislation that's just coming out, I think as we're sitting down talking about this, to potentially be voted on in the next few days, when it's probably going to be an 800, 900,000 page bill, certainly is not the way to do business, and certainly not a way in a state like Illinois to do things when it comes to our energy grid in Illinois, which actually today is one of the few competitive features we have in the state of Illinois when it comes to attracting business, is that the reliable energy sector we have here in the state.
So one of the things from covering electrical issues over the years that I've learned, and I think a lot of people may be unaware of, the lights that you have burning in your house right now, that electricity was produced 1 second ago. And that whenever we turn on the light, we go down, turn the switch, turn something on, wash our clothes, whatever, we take it for granted. The electricity is always there. And what I've learned is there's a term that people might want to be familiar with, is called baseload power. For the electricity to be there, you have to have a power source that is available 24/7, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And the simple reality is that primarily that is produced by either nuclear power or fossil fuels, that wind and solar are intermittent power sources. They come and go. We all know the sun doesn't shine at night, so the solar isn't working. And the one last thing I'll say is that for people to understand this issue, there is not in the world today the technology to store massive quantities of electrical power. So you might say, well, we'll store that solar power so it's available at night. You can do that if you want to put car batteries in your basement and turn on a lamp. But you can't do that for a modern industrialized society. And so that is what is at risk here. And I just want the public, because this can get very involved. So I'm trying to make sure that they can kind of follow a basic understanding. If we go to wind and solar through government mandate, wouldn't we be threatening the power grid and be then all of a sudden having not only brownouts, but faced with these much higher costs?
Well, again, I think without the advancing technology in place of storage, like you said, I do worry that we will go to a less reliable power sector in the United States. I think, people, there's, when you think about the electricity that comes to your home, some people are off the grid, or some people might have their own solar panels on their home that sell back into the grid, things like that may power their home. But almost all Americans are relying upon utility scale electricity. So that means a utility, whether it's a municipal utility here in Springfield, an investor-owned utility like a ComEd or a Ameren here in Illinois, or electrical co-ops. And so many people around the country rely upon, those forces to turn the lights on for them. And so as we move forward and we don't have renewables available yet on a really immense utility scale to help us power the country, I do think it's a concern that we're putting these arbitrary dates in there to make a transition. Look, I come from a district, I represent a district right smack in the middle of the state. The coal mine that fires the power plant here in Springfield's in my district. I have over 200 wind turbines in my district. I have solar arrays in my district. I have gas pipelines that go through my district. And I'm 10 miles away from a nuclear power plant on the east end of my district. So, I think we're representative of here right in the middle of the state of the diverse power sources that we can have in the state of Illinois. But taking something so vital as a couple coal-fired power plants, CWLP here in Springfield and the Prairie State Generating in Southern Illinois, which, by the way, provides energy across the state up into the suburbs. Even places like Geneva and Naperville get powered by Prairie down in Southern Illinois. You're going to put at risk people's lives, honestly, if they don't have reliable power on there. And I'm not one who has my head in the sand and does not want to transition to renewables. I just think we need to do it in a responsible way. And I also think, some of the environmental groups, which I have a lot of conversations with the environmental groups, they view shutting down a coal-fired power plant as a huge win for them. And that's not the way it should be approached. How it should be approached is in a reasonable manner that looks out for the best interest for the citizens, the almost 13 million citizens of Illinois, to make sure that we have reliable, cheap power to keep our lives moving forward. And I don't think this bill will do that. I think it will put in jeopardy the reliable grid that we have here in Illinois and the cheap power that we have here in Illinois.
Yeah, I get the impression that a lot of people who fancy themselves as environmentalists get the idea that we can just get rid of fossil fuels, switch over to wind and solar, and everything will be the same. And the reality is everything is not going to be the same, because wind and solar are not cheaper, they're more expensive.
And the other thing that frustrates me sometimes as well is the fact that, and I'm not one that is a big player on dividing the state between north and south and things like that, but where the energy is produced in this state is in central and southern Illinois. That's really where it's produced, and northern Illinois outside of the Chicago metro area with the nuclear plants. And my friends in Chicago need to realize as we expand renewables again on that utility scale, those renewables are going to be located in my district in central Illinois that are going to power the rest of the state. And the impact that has on my communities when it comes to siting these wind farms and changing our transmission lines, adding transmission lines, that's going to have a real impact on my friends and neighbors to provide energy to the northern part of the state. And I think that's something that gets lost in the discussion. A few years ago, we were in a committee and we had a discussion about there's a task force to look at wind energy on Lake Michigan. And I asked the sponsor of the legislation in the task force why they wanted to push out potential siting of wind turbines on Lake Michigan out to 3 miles off of the coast outside of Chicago. And she said, because of aesthetics. And I kind of chuckled when I look at, my friends around here in central Illinois who get a wind turbine located, 500 yards from their house. I think they have aesthetic problems as well with some of that stuff. But Chicago doesn't want it, no closer than 3 miles for a wind turbine. And that's a lot of the discussion. There's so many moving parts to this, to energy. One of the reasons I enjoy being involved in it is it's such a complex issue, and it's kind of fun to get down in the nitty gritty on it. But it's a very complicated issue that, we can't do things quickly. We need to really think about what we're doing for the best interests of all Illinoisans.
Yeah, and again, I think people then who think those who are opposed to going to wind and solar, well, you're either, the charges, you're either a shill for the coal companies or you're just worried about the coal miner jobs. But we have to move forward to a more modern economy. And I would say that isn't the point. The point is that when we have a modern society that we have today, we have steel mills down in the Alton area. You can't run a steel mill on a solar panel. You can't keep that steel melted on a windmill. And look at the L in Chicago. Again, the amount of power that is needed in a modern industrialized society is massive. And it's not just turning on your reading lamp with a battery in the basement. That can be done. You can put a solar panel and do okay for some of your home use. But you have to look beyond that, and I think sometimes people miss that. The other thing is, as far as replacing the fossil fuels with wind and solar is a big problem. And as we see this chart here, and Tim, I apologize, this is from 2018, and this is also energy consumption by the entire country. But it gives you an idea when we look around the country that natural gas is almost 31%, again, as of 2018. So you got oil, 36.5, that's fossil. Natural gas, that's fossil fuels. Then coal, 13, fossil fuels. And by the time you get down to wind and solar, wind is 2.5% and solar is less than 1%. Now, this might have moved a little bit since then, but it's not moved a hell of a lot. And then when we look at Illinois energy consumption, this is again about 5 years old. It's hard to find a updated version so far. Illinois is the #1 state for nuclear power, which makes up over half of our power source. But again, when you look at the coal, the kind of maroon color there, and the light blue, which is natural gas, that makes up approximately 42% of the energy pie. Wind is in light green, and again, solar. Wind and solar, or I think or how much? Do you know how much wind and solar are collectively?
Our current rate for renewables in Illinois is somewhere north of 7%, and we still haven't hit the goals of the Future Energy Jobs Act that we put in place a few years ago, which I think we were supposed to be at 15% as of today, and it just shows that bringing renewables online is more difficult maybe than people think. The other thing I'll say, looking at a couple of those charts, we do lead the way on nuclear in Illinois, and I think our nuclear fleet, especially for the northern part of our state for the transmission in what's called the PJM market, which is the Chicago area and the northern part of the state. Nuclear is what drives the power in that section of the state. But the southern part of the state and the central part of the state, which is in the MISO region, continues to largely be dependent upon coal. But as your chart points out, more and more with natural gas. And the reason we see coal use go down, honestly, is because the increased use of natural gas, because the cost of natural gas has plummeted over the last decade due to fracking, very honestly. The ability to frack and to extract natural gas and be able to put that through the system to power people's homes and businesses has really been an important part of our energy sector here in the United States over the last decade, and has allowed us to reduce our reliance upon coal. So, but under this bill, the governor also wants to get rid of natural gas, and by 2045, I believe, is what he's talking about. And we have a potential natural gas investment in the southern part of Sangamon County. It's $1 billion investment that would probably go by the boards if this bill goes into effect. So I think the other thing, when you look at those charts, especially when we talk about the MISO region in the central and southern part of the states, if we get rid of our coal-fired power plant here at CWLP in Springfield or Prairie down in southern Illinois, we're going to be pulling here in Springfield. We're going to be pulling power out of the MISO grid, which goes into several states around the Midwest, the middle part of the country, and a lot of those use coal-powered plants. We're going to be pulling Indiana and Kentucky power that are coal-powered plants to come into power Illinois. So, that's why I think it's a little bit foolish when we're doing a one-off, one-state deal like we're trying to do here in Illinois. I mean, if people really want to get serious about the issue, I think it has to be more a national approach to it, and it really is just not going to fit too well, I think, with Illinois.
And the other thing that I think on one hand I get it, but it drives me crazy, is so I think we've laid out to people what's at stake here. What's literally at stake is that your power could not be reliable. Your power could be much more expensive because, and as we've said, to keep the grid up, when you're going to wind and solar that is intermittent, you're going to end up buying power on outside the state to import it, and that power is probably generated by fossil fuels. So what are you even gaining? This is all for like window dressing, that I'm an environmentalist, wave the flag, yay me, look at me, I'm saving the planet. And you're not saving anything. We're not achieving anything except for diminishing the quality of life. And what drives me crazy, I say, Tim, is look what's going on in the legislature that you and I are familiar with. So sometimes we just, well, that's the way it is in Illinois. But as we sit here on Friday, and this is going to be, you're going to be back in session on this bill on Tuesday and Wednesday, I believe.
Wednesday, I think the House is coming back, right?
Okay.
And
have you even seen the bill to know what's in it?
No, I think there was a draft that got circulated last night. But, again, I mean, this is going to be an 800, 900-page bill that people are going to have to comb through over the weekend. And again, energy is complex. And there's, honestly, there's not a lot of legislators in the General Assembly that pay deep attention to energy legislation, because it is a complex piece of legislation. And we deal with so many other issues as well. And so it's going to be something going through this weekend, trying to figure out what's in there, and then trying to have a vote on something that's so complex come Tuesday and Wednesday. And I think it's a very difficult way to legislate. And again, I think it's unfortunate that we can't have a more collaborative way that we do things instead of waiting for the governor to introduce his language or some kind of alternative proposal from one of the leaders. I mean, there's a better way to do this. The other thing I'll say that I think that's frustrating that I've heard the last couple of days is that the coal plants, specifically CWLP and Prairie, quote unquote, came at the 11th hour to negotiate. Well, if the people who are in the room making an energy bill in Illinois didn't have a clue about our coal fleet, then maybe they shouldn't be in the room negotiating the bill. everyone should have known what our situation is in the state when it comes to our reliance upon coal in the central and southern parts of the state. And to think that somehow, Prairie and CWLP are coming at the 11th hour, well, maybe the people writing the bill should have engaged them earlier to have a more collaborative process to get to something that's better for the people of Illinois.
And this brings up another area, a couple of things, and we won't keep you much longer here, but why now? Why are they doing this now? And I remember former Senator Andy Minar, who's now, I believe, a counselor to the governor. But Andy Minar and the late Senator Sandoval on transportation, on the infrastructure, they went around, held like 12 hearings around the state on what were the needs of various areas. Well, we need a bridge, we need a road, whatever. Why are we bringing this up now in June of 2021 when I think you're right, and it's been my experience, a whole lot of people in the legislature, it's not that they're stupid people, they just haven't been briefed properly to know what they're what they're voting on in the bill, as we just said. You haven't even seen it, lawmakers haven't even seen it yet. And secondly, once they see it and read it, are they even really understanding the implications? Because I bet a whole lot of them don't know what we've just told the viewers, that we don't, as a world, have yet the technology to store massive quantities of electricity. And so if you eliminate what we're using as a power source, you're either going to have blackouts, or again, you're going to be going and buying the power from someone else. And if you're buying it from Kentucky, last time I checked, Kentucky as an example, 80% of their power comes from coal-fired plants. So what are we achieving? Do you think your fellow lawmakers, again, we're not suggesting that they're not intelligent people, but do you think that they have the background knowledge, that they've been educated enough on these issues to A, vote on this now, and B, if you can speak to why is this happening at this time?
Well, I think, number one, unless you're on the Public Utilities Committee or the Enrgy and Environment Cmte in the House or the Energy Committee in the Senate, and you've been on there for years, I think it's difficult to understand in depth these issues. You might have knowledge on renewables, you might have knowledge on the nuclear fleet or something like that, but to have a broad-based knowledge of it is it takes some time and it takes a lot of work, and I think that's a concern. And I think as we move forward through this, I'm sure you're going to have people voting on this legislation potentially that only like the idea of oh gee, we want more renewables. That's a great idea, and that's a laudable goal. Again, I don't disagree with the fact that we need to move towards more renewables. We just need to do it in a responsible fashion. Terry, the one thing that I really don't hear my constituents complaining a lot about is the cost of their energy and the reliability that they have of their energy. And I think we are trying to find an answer to a problem that doesn't really exist per se. And that is, how do we attack, obviously, global warming and climate change and things like that. But, doing it on such a piecemeal fashion in the state of Illinois isn't going to get us where I think a lot of people want to be. The other thing that I think is important that people need to know is that the energy sector is behind now the transportation sector when it comes to emitting greenhouse gases. So, I think we need to have a larger conversation about this. And I think we need to make sure that, again, that we have a reliable energy in the state of Illinois, that we're not kicking people out of their jobs in the name of green energy. Because very honestly, the union jobs that are present in a place like Prairie or CWLP are not going to be long-term jobs that are in the renewable energy. As I said earlier, I have over 200 wind turbines in my district. There are not hundreds of people that are employed daily to take care of those turbines in my district as there are at a place like CWLP. And I think for me, that's one of the issues, along with the reliability and having a strong energy system in Illinois, that really make this legislation problematic for me.
And as far as why is this happening now, is this because people want it as a campaign issue? Is that why this is coming up?
I think this has everything to do with the governor and his idea of trying to make Illinois the most progressive state in the country, which for me, as a downstate Republican, isn't the way that I really want to see Illinois go. But I think he's trying to put a feather in his cap. He's had a very rough go of it over the past year, and losing the vote on his tax amendment and some of the other things that have gone on. He's broke his pledge when it comes to redistricting and signing a politically drawn map. And now he's trying to get a feather in his cap with the progressives to make sure that he's the greenest governor in the nation. And whether or not what that means to the competitiveness of the state when it comes to attracting business, because we have a current really good energy market in Illinois, I don't think he cares a lot about that. And I think he's just trying to get a win for a constituency of his.
One last question then. Couple of things. One, do you think that there is going to be a vote, or might there just be coming together and debating it? And is there any chance they'll put a vote off and say, well, wait a minute, maybe we ought to slow this process down?
Well, as we sit here today, the Senate's scheduled to come in Tuesday. The House is scheduled to come in Wednesday. I think it largely depends on the vote in the Senate, what happens. And then the other thing is, I believe this takes 71 votes. We're past the end of May. I don't know what the roll call is on the Democratic side, but I think right now there are very few Republican votes that would go on this. And so, I think we'll see what will happen over the next few days. But I can't imagine that the governor would want a vote to go up on the board and for him to lose. So we'll see what happens. But hopefully we don't have a vote, and we continue negotiations over this and collaboration over this to get to a point that makes it more palatable for more members of the General Assembly, not certain members of the Democratic caucus.
It's interesting, the politics of this, in the sense that, we saw President Biden stop the Keystone pipeline, costing a lot of union jobs, and now this, which is going to eliminate a lot of union jobs. And you just kind of, I don't know, it just, I guess, is more of a reflection that the environmental group within the Democratic Party, I guess, is replacing the union supports. And you wonder what the fallout will be of a vote on to do this when the unions see that the party that they've supported for so long is voting to eliminate their jobs.
Well, I think Republicans have a very good track record, especially recently, of supporting unions, especially private sector unions, especially our building trades, especially our emergency personnel, our police and fire unions that have come under fire across the country. I think Republicans understand that these are good paying jobs, that people that provide essential services to our communities. And we're going to do all we can to make sure that those folks have good jobs to go to every day, and that their lights get turned on every night when they come home as well. And I think that's what the Republican Party stands for. And some of the wedge issues that the Democrats put out there when it comes to unions, I think, are kind of false arguments on things. But when it comes to actually putting your money where your mouth is, I'm trying to support my union jobs here in my district when it comes to the energy industry. I've supported a capital plan to put folks to work reconstructing our state, and I think a lot of my Republican colleagues agree the same.
All right, Representative Tim Butler, we know you got to go. Thanks so much, and we'll tell the viewers that the Illinois Channel will cover the debate and air it. And Tim, we thank you for joining us and giving our viewers an update on what's going on.
You're welcome. I appreciate it.
Thanks for watching, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to our channel. And while you're at it, please leave us a comment. Thank you for watching.